from the News Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. We have a great show. We're talking with our chief investigative reporter, Phil Williams, about a series of stories he has been doing lately on the money in politics, specifically up at our state legislature, the money that lobbyists are spending in the final day before the legislative session starts. That was a remarkable story. He estimated some $60 million is spent by special interests to influence legislation in Tennessee. Some fascinating stuff. And what I love about OpenLine is the chance. We'll talk to Phil, who's here in person, and then you can call in with questions. And we're going to play one of the stories tonight. Phil, thank you for being here.
It's good to be with you.
Thank you. All right. We want to play one of these stories. It's not short. It's great, but it's not short. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, then we're going to play the story. What made you look into this now?
Well, this has really sort of been my bread and butter, as you know, over the years. But it occurred to me that there are so many major issues that are going before the legislature in recent years. And it had been a really long time since we have been able to take a really deep dive into how much money is being spent to influence your lawmakers, who's spending that money, what are they getting for that money. And so that was one angle that we really wanted to show. But, you know, this is a time when Republicans and Democrats, the one thing they agree on is our system is broken. And so we really wanted to be able to show viewers how the system works, how money plays a role in how policy is decided. And that's part of the story that we're going to see. This is a part of Capitol Hill culture that I've known about, that we probably all have, those of us who cover Capitol Hill have heard about. But I wanted to be able to show the viewers just this mad frenzy that occurs, fundraising frenzy that occurs right before the legislature goes back into session every year. And I was working with a photojournalist who normally doesn't cover Capitol Hill. And the whole time as we were shooting these stories, he's going, wow, this is amazing. I had no idea. And so our goal was to have that same experience with the viewer and to show the viewer how Capitol Hill really works.
And people who know your work know you're not afraid to go in and say, you're doing something wrong, and hold people accountable. What I thought was so interesting about this is, you said from the outset, this isn't illegal. I mean, what we're showing you is how it works, but we're not going in to bust something wide open necessarily. We just want to show you what is happening and what is legal, right?
And that's because the lawmakers who benefit from the process are the ones who set the rules. That they are the ones who decide what is and what is not legal. I wanted to leave it to the viewer to decide, though, is this right?
I love that. Is this right? Okay, so that's going to set up. We are going to watch this. It's the second story you did. It's about 9 minutes. It's great. And this is the day before the legislature opens. Lawmakers are allowed to raise money. And right. So you followed that process. So let's watch that.
6:06 on Nashville's Morning News. The big legislative session begins tomorrow.
It's the day before Tennessee lawmakers return to session.
Just a few of the topics up for discussion.
As the city awakens,
Good morning, my kings and queens.
Some of Capitol Hill's best connected special interest lobbyists will soon be heading to breakfast.
We're here at 4th and Church. This is a breakfast, but it's not a breakfast for the hungry. It's a breakfast for the powerful. It's an invitation-only event where it will cost you $250 a head just to rub shoulders with the third most powerful man in state government.
That man is House Speaker Cameron Sexton.
Can we come up and visit in a bit?
Well, it's a fundraiser, so.
We asked him if we could come up. He said, well, it's a fundraiser, I'm not sure what that means, but we'll find out.
But first, we watch as Speaker Sexton is joined by a steady stream of lobbyists.
How are you? I'm doing well, thank you.
All of them responding to Sexton's invitation to contribute to his own Political Action Committee, a PAC designed to help keep him and his fellow Republicans in power.
Are you here to kiss the ring?
No, not at all. Thank you.
That was Ryan Haynes, who's the lobbyist for the liquor wholesalers in the state of Tennessee. It's a very powerful group. They control the distribution of all wine and liquor throughout the state. Coming down the sidewalk right now is the lobbyist for the beer industry, so the alcohol industry is well represented here this morning.
Because fundraising is banned during session, these pre-session fundraisers have become an annual tradition. That's a lobbyist for the Tennessee Hospital Association and other healthcare clients. These people represent one of the well-financed groups pushing for charter schools and school vouchers, as do these lobbyists who also work for the sports betting industry, along with payday lenders and the state's wine and liquor stores.
Well, I've got the invitation, but I don't have the $250. Well, let's see if we can get in.
Up on the 20th floor, we step out into a part of Capitol Hill culture the public never sees. The man in the red tie lobbies for a number of clients, including the private prison giant Core Civic and its millions of dollars in state contracts.
I'm sorry, sir. Gentlemen, this is a private event. You're welcome to be downstairs, but this is a closed event.
So the public is not allowed to see what's going on here?
This is a private event, sir. I hope you'll have a blessed day. Thank you so much.
Well, I was hoping for a different outcome, but I think that says a lot. Special interest lobbyists are able to stay in the room with the Speaker of the House, but because we had not shelled out $250, they're being kicked to the street. Right after the Speaker's breakfast, lobbyists headed here to 417 Union. It's billed as a lobbyist appreciation breakfast. It's not a fundraiser, but it is FaceTime with the number 2 man in the state Senate. It's now noon, and here at the upscale Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the Lieutenant Governor is hosting a fundraiser where, according to the invitation, for $1,000 you can have lunch with the man who runs the state Senate. So when people spend $1,000 for lunch with the Lieutenant Governor, what do you think they're expecting?
Well, I hope they're not expecting anything.
Outside the fundraiser for Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally's PAC,
Any chance you'll talk to us afterwards?
we again spot the liquor lobbyist. That's the beer lobbyist. Lobbyist for Google, as well as a for-profit company that wants to run charter schools. Lobbyist for the state's home builders and contractors. And again, the Core Civic lobbyist.
Some people call these shakedowns.
Oh, it's just all part of the way it is.
the way it is?
Just like you doing your job, we're doing ours.
All right. You and I have been around a long time, and people used to call these shakedowns.
Yeah.
What do you think of that terminology?
Well, I think maybe in the older days it was.
Unlike back then, McNally insists there's no pressure on those special interests.
It's not, quid pro quo. You come to my lunch and I'll take care of you. It's not one of those. It's just, it's just that you have to have money to run campaigns, and they're willing to help you because of your past records.
Right now it's 1 o'clock and we've moved 4 blocks, and over there at the 1230 Club, Governor Bill Lee is holding his own pre-session fundraiser. Again, it's invitation only for those who are willing to write the big checks.
Legislative session.
Inside, we hear the governor speaking, but our producer is quickly turned away, told it's a private event. Outside, we spot another lobbyist whose clients include Facebook and the health insurance industry.
6th floor.
We soon head back to Capitol Hill.
Just a few minutes ago, we got a call from the House Speaker's office. Speaker Sexton will apparently talk to us in just a moment.
We've never said you have to give money.
Do you think people feel pressured to contribute when they're about to have business before
the House?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you can make that argument anytime throughout the year if they know that you're in between sessions and you're not having an election. So I don't buy that.
But we checked, and in 2018, when Sexton was just a House member, his PAC raked in a measly $26,000. After he took the gavel in 2019, those contributions shot up to $430,000.
There's different levels of how people provide support depending on who you are.
But does that suggest that people feel pressured to contribute if the person has power?
That's a question you can ask the people who give money. I don't think anybody at home, when I do fundraising, feels pressured. I don't think there's any groups that feel pressure.
The biggest thing we do every year is the budget.
I'm proposing a funding strategy.
As day turns to night, the quest for campaign cash isn't over.
Innovative and creative in investing.
K-12 education. It's not just about throwing more money at it. It's about
a new morning, and the legislature gavels back into session at noon, which leaves just 4 hours left for fundraising. This fundraiser is for the head of the Senate Republican caucus, Senator Ken Yeager. You can see him right here through the window. Again, we're seeing a lot of the same faces over and over, people walking in with checks in hand. The man on the left lobbies for payday giant Advance Financial, the man on the right for the state's broadcast companies. There's also that lobbying team that represents the sports betting industry, payday lenders, and school privatization forces, a lobbyist for the Tennessee Education Association, a lobbyist whose clients include the state's short-term lenders, and a lobbyist whose clients include more school privatization groups and Koch Industries. It's now 8:30, and the legislature's Democrats are having their own fundraiser here inside this downtown high-rise. There are so few of them, and they have so little power, they decided to have one combined event.
I mean, I think the pre-session fundraiser is something that really developed because we are not allowed to raise money during the session, which is actually a reform that's worthwhile.
But go ahead. Thank you. Unlike their Republican colleagues, the Democrats welcome us inside. This event hosted by a lobbyist whose clients include the Tennessee Titans.
Hello, how are you?
Here you still have special interests dropping off checks, but the size of this event pales by comparison. There are some people who still consider this to be a shakedown.
Well, I mean, I don't think people are coming upstairs today to visit with the Democratic caucuses because they feel like it's a shakedown.
In fact, Yarbrough says the real money tends to follow the power.
Historically, you'll see that special interests support the party in power a lot more. And right now, you've got a supermajority that's very keen on power, and it pays a lot of attention to the people who aren't supporting it. So yeah, I think people do feel pressure to give sometimes.
And what goes on here behind closed doors, he argues, isn't good for democracy.
Is that you have too many people who don't have to go out and look for support in their community because they can just get it right here in Nashville from the special interest community.
I hereby declare the House of Representatives is now in session.
So much to talk about there. What fascinated me, there's a lot, but the interviews you had with the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker, Lieutenant Governor McNally, Speaker Sexton. You ask Lieutenant Governor McNally, what do you think people expect when you pay $1,000 for lunch? He said, I hope they're not expecting anything. How surprised were you that they spoke to you? And I guess by what they said.
Well, I have a good relationship with both of them. I think both of them think that I have been fair to them. Here's the thing. They say they don't think or have no reason to believe that there's any pressure to contribute. What lobbyists will tell me, not for attribution, not on the record, is they are afraid not to play this game. That if they are not there putting a check into the hands of these powerful lawmakers, that a competitor on an issue may be there putting a check into the hands of the lawmakers, and that moment of access is really what they talk about. It's not buying votes, but it is gaining access. It's getting you one-on-one time. And so some lobbyists have told me, not for attribution, that yes, they do feel pressure to play this game. Some say they would rather not, but they feel like they don't have a choice.
These are businesses. Businesses are big on the bottom line. Businesses don't just throw money around for no reason. They must feel like they're getting something for it. We're talking about a lot of money. And so it is fascinating to me when I hear politicians say, oh, there's no pressure, and oh, I'm sure they don't expect anything. It just kind of flies in the face of common sense, frankly. But that's kind of what's said. Everyone just says it, and no one does otherwise.
Yeah, you can probably go back over the 3 decades now that I've been covering Capitol Hill and having done these sorts of stories, and the answers through the years are pretty much the same.
Part of what you did with your reporting was you talked about estimate of Tennessee lobbying expenditures, and it's just tons of money. I mean, $2.7 million between 2017 and 2021 from the Tennessee Hospital Association. That's just so much money. And when you said at the top of this that people believe the system is broken, is this part of what we're talking about?
It is. I mean, the one question I actually have not asked anyone, but I will before the series is over, is who's representing the little person, the consumer? Because, we calculated, it's an estimate, but the hospital industry has spent about $10 million over the last 5 years, if you include not only the Tennessee Hospital Association, but individual hospital systems. And that could be an undercount, could be a little over. But, who is representing the patient? Patients don't have lobbyists.
What do you think happens next? Do you think changes are made, or what we're talking about is we're asking people who benefit from a system to reform a system.
Right.
And that's a difficult thing.
And the history in Tennessee has been that ethics reform only happens begrudgingly when there is scandal. A number of lawmakers arrested in a bribery scheme, for example, was the last time we had major ethics reform. And as part 3 of the story showed, back then, 2006, the legislature passed a law that said lobbyists cannot contribute to state political campaigns. Well, they found other ways. It's not personal contributions from lobbyists anymore. The lobbyists will set up a political action committee and put money into that PAC, and then it's a contribution not from the lobbyists, but from the PAC.
That was a great report. Yes, they've kind of gotten around it. They're not giving money directly to the candidate. They're giving it to a PAC, and the PAC gives the money to the candidate. So it's all, I guess, it's legal, even though it's the same thing.
Exactly. It's essentially the same thing, but it carries a different legal perspective because a PAC is considered to be an independent entity.
This is so important, and that was so well done. So now that kind of sets the table for what we're going to talk about. Few people on the line. If you want to call in, there are a few lines open. There's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We will take a break, come back, take your calls right after this.